All right, everyone. It's been a minute, so I'm a little rusty. I'm Vanessa. I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date's October 8th, 2017. I am still sober, and I have not updated this page in a really long time. This channel, in a really long time, and I'm doing this because there's something that's telling me that I need to. I'm gonna just trust that. So here we go. I'm gonna give you a rundown of my dog who just threw my pajamas at me. And why am I sitting on the floor even? I don't know, because I've made a mess of my apartment and I haven't really set up a new place to record. Let's just get down to business. I am still sober. That means I've got a little over 5 years sober now, and that is a true miracle, quite honestly. I've had a rough couple years, like most people have. It is, I think, a testament to the program that I was in, Big Book Awakening, that my recovery has been very rooted in something beyond external circumstances. So I'm grateful for that. I will always be grateful to 12 Steps and AA and Big Book Awakening for giving me freedom from this reliance and dependence upon alcohol. There have been 2 instances in my entire recovery where there have been times where I had so much anxiety and depression and just grief and anger and resentment, where I've been like, I don't even know how to handle all these feelings, but I feel like the one thing that can make it all go away is a drink. Those moments came and went, over with. I was just like, well, that was ridiculous. That was a really stupid thought. But the reality is it's always something that's going to come up. I'm really grateful it doesn't come up often. I'm doing more work in order for that to be, oh my God, are you trying to tell me to go to sleep? Okay, well, it didn't help that I didn't make my bed today. So that said, I haven't been to a meeting, I haven't been to an in-person meeting in at least 6 months. I do online meetings maybe twice a month, and that's been a huge change from, if you knew me when I started these videos, I was going at least 3 times a week, sometimes more. I had commitments, I was really involved, but my whole program in general has been lacking, essentially. And maybe that's why I felt inclined to like make this video and kind of like hold myself accountable, because I feel stuck in so many different areas of my life, and I know that getting back into the program of AA and really making it less about me and making it more about how I can help others is always a way to kind of like loosen up whatever energy I have that's just like negatively focused on myself. Sponsees, I have religiously had always, since I got sober, 3 sponsees at all times. Sometimes it would trickle down to 1 sponsee, and then I would and then 2 more would come up, you know. At the most, I've had about 5 sponsees. It was not great. So I'll get into that a little bit more later. Next thing that I want to cover is art and writing. I have not done either in exactly over a year. I had a blog that I would update pretty regularly, and that's done. Haven't done that in a while. You know, this is going to tie into what I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but essentially the last time I wrote anything on my blog was in March of last year, because my dog died and I got really sad. And then after that, it was just a roller coaster of everything else. So I never really got back to it. I have been actually, and I've never actually since then haven't had any feelings about it. Just this month, I was like, I kind of miss it. I kind of really miss putting my thoughts and ideas and feelings on paper and sharing them with people. So I think I'm just flirting with the idea again of getting back into it, because that has always been my safe haven. It has always been my foundation for how to process life. And I understand now that I have not been able to process life at all. And I'm feeling a little bit more in my body enough to be able to consider processing life. And the best way for me to do that is writing. So that's that. The next thing I want to talk about is mental health. I have been diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder since I was in my early 20s. I think 19, I was first diagnosed with a mood disorder. And then by 21, it was definitely bipolar 2, and definitely experienced depressions. Since I've gotten sober, that's 100% true and accurate. It's pretty, I'm laughing because I know I'm gonna post this, someone's gonna be like, you've been manic as fuck, what are you talking about? But I don't feel that reckless restlessness, that agitation that I used to anymore. A lot of that has been removed. I think it just has to do with the alcohol that I was drinking for so long. I do think that it like damaged like parts of my brain, and now after this long in sobriety, I think that just like all my brain chemicals have healed and like leveled out in some way. So, but that's, you know, there's a lot of lifestyle changes that I've had to make. And I know that people are just like, oh, when you're depressed and someone says, go out and get, you know, drink water and go for a walk. Like, I'm sorry, but it does help the body, and it still needs what it needs. It needs nourishment. It needs exercise. It needs hydration. It needs, you know, they say nutrients. It needs activity. It needs connection in order to feel like it can function. So whenever you're depriving yourself of any of those things, of course you're going to fall into these different mood disorders. It catches me off guard sometimes to remember that that was me, that was still my story. And I'm like, oh, that is still my story. And I think that over the last couple of years, I've lost touch with that person of who I was. And, you know, Joan Didion is one of my favorite writers, and she'd say, I think it's best that we keep on, you know, nodding terms with our former selves. And it's just like this polite, you know, remembrance of who we were. Doesn't mean we have to invite our old past selves back in for coffee or anything, but just to acknowledge that that's who we were. And it's not like there's any, I think I just forget, like there isn't any emotional attachment or detachment. I have such a different life today than I did 10 years ago. It just blows my mind. But anyway, all that to say that, I don't really know if that bipolar 2 diagnosis is 100% accurate. I think that our brains are just trying to survive in a highly dysfunctional society, and we're all just doing our best. And I'm grateful that I was shown a lot of different tools to be able to manage my mental health in a better way so that I wasn't hurting myself and other people anymore, essentially. It kind of reminds me of Girl Interrupted, you know, oh, spoiler alert, it's been out for like 20 years, but she looks back at her time in the mental hospital and she's just like, I don't even know if were any of us really crazy, you know? Then there's, you know, Sylvia Plath, she has in one of her writings, she goes, you know, maybe the world itself is a bad dream. And that's kind of like a pretty pessimistic worldview that I don't necessarily like agree with, but I can acknowledge like the sentiment behind it, because it's like, shit's fucked up. And sometimes it's really easy to get into the slippery slope of just like diving into that negativity and the nightmare of existence. But the reality is, and I know this is just nature, is that, you know, there's a flip side to everything. And so for all that depravity and inhumanity, there's just a lot of joy and love and beauty that can be experienced every single day. Are we encouraged enough to try to see that side? I think it really depends on stuff that you expose yourself to. With your like social media or your news. I just realized that like I've been out of the loop on news for like 2 years, because I made when I deleted all my social media a couple of years ago, I stopped reading the news and I deleted all the alerts off my phone. If I know about something, it's because I keep seeing it on social media now, or because my dad, well, he's very much somebody who has like news on the background like constantly, so he'll, you know, tell me, you know, instill his fear in me, so that's always helpful. But anyway, I don't know what that had to do with mental health, but I felt okay mentally, and I'll go more into the details on that in a bit. As far as my DUI, a lot of people come to this channel and follow me on social media, and I'm sorry if I deleted you. I deleted over 1,100 followers maybe like a month ago or so. I don't know what, I've just had this real craving for privacy lately. I don't know, something about that used to really be fulfilling for me, and it's less so now, because I did like it. I think I'm just tired a lot, and I know people get kind of upset when I don't respond to them right away. So, Anyhow, I thought that maybe deleting a lot of people would be easier, and I don't know if it has made anything easier. A lot of people watched the video where I had 3 DUIs and my jail experience and everything, my rehab experience. And I am really still grateful for that experience. I don't have any shame around that. I'm not proud of it, honestly, either. I guess I am kind of proud of like a certain aspect of that. It's like, oh yeah, I had 3 DUIs, so let's like conjure up an image of what we think of somebody who has 3 DUIs, and what they must be like, you know. I get to contrast that with my actual life and who I actually am, and it's like, you know, didn't see that coming. I don't think anyone saw that coming, and it's cool. I mean, I know a lot of people turn into great people without some traumatic, you know, legal issues in their life, or spiritual issues in their life, but this is my story. So I just remember so clearly that feeling of just like hopelessness, that it's like never going to be done. Like I'm just never going to be finished with the stupid classes. I'm never going to be done paying off all these damn fines. I'm never going to be done with all the meetings that I have to go to and all the stupid court cards. I'm not going to be done with all the, you know, court visits. And, you know, it was just always felt, can I keep my job? Am I going to lose my friends? Do my parents hate me? Like, you know, how do I talk about this with people that I meet? Like, it's just, and the reality is like all those things that we think are so important are not really that important. And I don't hardly ever think about that DUI or those 3 DUIs ever. So I don't think about the classes. I think this is the first time I've even thought about the stupid classes and the huge amount, the thousands of dollars that I had to spend for getting my license back, and like, oh my God, the visits to the DMV and all the paperwork. It's just crazy. Oh, the other day I was trying to renew something. No, that's not true. I was trying to do something on Instagram, and they and they asked me for my driver's license number because they definitely need my personal information. And I actually didn't remember my driver's license number anymore. And I was like, oh my God, like it's been a minute since I've had to recall that. And for, I don't know what, 3 years of my life, like I had that thing memorized forwards and backwards and upside down, because every single form that I would have to fill out included my driver's license number. So it was just like, you know, I had that thing memorized, and I was like, damn, I haven't had to write that down in a while. So I must be doing something right, I guess. Anyhow, so my DUI stuff, it's given me a lot of perspective on stuff. And just if you're in the middle of it, I want to encourage you that it doesn't last forever, and just get done what you have to get done. It'll be over before you know it, and then you'll forget about it. I mean, don't forget about it to the point where you repeat it again, but just to the point where, you know, it's putting you where you need to be in your life, essentially. And now the real main focus of why I've kind of been gone for the last, I don't know, year, I guess, is just the monumental amount of deaths that I've experienced inside and outside the rooms of AA and just recovery. I've lost a lot of people in the last couple years. I think it really started in the spring of 20, God, I can't even go back. I don't even want to go back far enough to, you know, name everybody who I've lost, but for sure, you know, it started really affecting me when I lost my cousins. So I have a cousin who is in Mexico City, and her name is Xochitl, and she was violently and brutally killed by her partner, and so was her daughter. And it was all over the news in Mexico. The images were horrific, because then the guy who killed them also killed himself, and his body was hanging over a balcony. And this was right also still in the middle of, I think it was like the second wave of COVID, like in early 2021, I guess, no, spring 2021, when things were starting to close down again. So then you just see all the, you know, officials walking around with like their masks, and I was just like, what is this life? And she was somebody who always would reach out to me, like, and she would write in Spanish, and I could be like, Google Translate, and like I just butcher Spanish and trying to write back to her. But she was just so loving and just so supportive, just like the first person to comment and like on everything about my recovery. And it was just like this really nice kind of like bumper in social media to when I was really just opening up about my recovery and mental health stuff. to have somebody like that who just I knew unconditionally loved me and was going to encourage me. And I now understand that maybe it's because she related to a lot of it, or she was watching somebody else struggle with a lot of it. And so that's probably why she connected to it so much. But you know, I didn't get to have those conversations with her, unfortunately. It's just like blows my mind. So that was awful. It's just crazy how that happens. And then my other cousin, Norma, she got a pretty aggressive cancer, and then she did okay, and then, you know, within a year she was gone. And she's another person who was just like constantly my number one supporter, like, and you know, and calls, and just like she would always get like our family together, and she was just kind of organizer of all the great like parties and the, you know, the stuff. So I don't know, it's been really difficult to understand that, I guess, or to kind of really live in that reality. So in addition to that, I also lost 3 sponsees, and it was really devastating because, again, I get very close to my sponsees. We go through a whole experience of going through the 12 steps. It takes about 6 months to go through the step work. And we meet every week for 2 hours, and we go through and we read, and they answer questions, and I get to really know them on a deeply personal level in a way that maybe they've never been comfortable or been given the opportunity to have someone know them in that way. And that's really part of our recovery, is feeling connected, feeling seen, and feeling accepted and loved. And that's just something that I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that with sponsees. I love pouring my love and my encouragement and hope into these women. And so the first one was Anna. She passed away. She had a lot of health issues. She was my age, but she had a lot of like autoimmune issues, and mix that with, you know, she'd already been on life support for her alcoholism, and, you know, her body was just so weak, and, you know, I knew that she was in a lot of, you know, chronic pain. One of her friends reached out to me and let me know that she passed away. And so the reality is just that she's gone. And so that's a bummer. And the second one was Faith. And Faith was very special to me. And she had celebrated 5 years of sobriety in April of last year. And then she relapsed, overdosed, and died a month later. And she and I had just spent 9 hours in my living room, you know, doing her 5th step. And I hate to say that I can ever feel like when someone's not gonna make it, but there's something, I don't know if it's just like God telling me, like, say everything you need to say now because you may not see them again, or what it is. But there was something that kind of didn't sit right with me when the last time we talked. And then, you know, she passed away on Mother's Day, and that was just, you know, just devastating. That was awful. And I just had so many questions because I witnessed so much healing and freedom in her, but I did still feel this resistance to something. But she's gone, and I went to her service, and I just really feel for her parents. And I got to see all these people who were on her, you know, resentment list, and it was just interesting because I'm like, oh, I know so much about your relationship with Faith. And I can say that when she was just such a loving person. At the end of the day, she just wanted to love everyone, and I related to that deeply. And shortly after that, well, actually just in December of last year, another long-time sponsee that I'd had always kept in touch, and her name is Andrea, and she did absolutely die from her disease of alcoholism. And I know that she had struggled, and she would call me, and I still have her voicemails on my phone because I didn't know if it was going to be the last time I ever heard her voice. There were numerous times, and it's because I had to stop answering her phone calls because anytime I would answer her phone calls, she wouldn't remember our conversations. So that was, you know, devastating. And she'd already had, you know, suicide attempts, and I think I'd just been kind of holding on to this hope that I had that she'd be able to make it, because I don't know, there's just, I can still feel like she's just, it's hard for me to actually, it scares me to accept the fact that somebody who is so bubbly and loving and so, like, I can still just feel like her energy, her like just like buoyancy whenever she would enter a room. And that's such a cliche thing to say, but she really was just like love. It's really difficult and scary for me to put together that that same person is also the same person who has been completely at the end of her rope and completely unable to see any glimmer of hope in her life. And I know that, and I understand that, and I've been there, you know, and it just sucks to know these beautiful, amazing people who felt that way and just did not keep going, could not keep going. I promise that this will pass, just like keep going. And I do encourage that to everyone whenever you're feeling just completely like this is the end. And I can just so feel it in my bones, that like loss of hope, that loss of faith that anything's going to change. There's no joy in your bones. There's nothing to look forward to. That complete devastation and isolation and aloneness, even when you have people who you know love you, just surrounding you, there's just such a separation. And, you know, that's a really dark place to be. But I encourage anybody who feels that way, that I promise you, you can just keep going. It really does mold you into somebody who you are going to love so much. And you're going to look back at these times and these days and say, God, I'm so sorry that that happened. And I'm so glad that we're here now. And that's usually a much better place. So that was my 3 sponsees who passed away. And then I had, on top of it, and this is probably another reason why I stopped writing, is my writing mentor, Jonathan Valania. He also died. And he had a heart issue, but it was very sudden the way that he died. And I so miss him. And it's so crazy because I never met him in person. Let me tell you about Jonathan Valania real quick. Okay, so Jonathan Valania is a journalist, and he mostly wrote about music stuff and stuff in like Philadelphia. So I never met him. But I would talk to him on the phone, and I would email with him regularly. And I knew about him because he'd written this beautiful article about Modest Mouse. And Modest Mouse is one of my favorite bands. I've seen them over a dozen times, and I've traveled to ridiculous states just to see them. And I read this article by him, and I was just like, who is this guy? Because this is amazing. And then I found him, I tracked him down, and he had written all these other beautiful articles. He was in this documentary on Wilco. It was just like, he was just badass, right? And so I reached out to him, and he was kind of like mentoring me, and I got to write for him eventually. And he also is somebody who I pitched an idea to on Shane Claiborne, who I really love. He's wrote the book called The Irresistible Revolution. He's a Christian activist. He's very much about social justice and kind of giving platforms to any marginalized people so that they can, you know, be lifted up. And he's really trying to be part of the solution in a Christian faith. And so anyway, I had pitched the story. He's from Philadelphia. And so I'd pitched the story to Jonathan, who was very clearly, he'd already told me he was an atheist. And I was like, okay, but I want to pitch you this story about a Christian activist. And he was like, yeah, sounds interesting. Let me know. And I'm here to back you up. And I was like, hell yeah, thanks, dude. And so here I was, just like, you know, naively trying to get in touch with Shane Claiborne, who, you know, is just awesome. And I got the interview the same day. Actually, I interviewed him. Okay, let me just tell you what actually happened. So I was at a Modest Mouse concert in Red Rocks, and I took a little video of the concert, and I sent it to Jonathan and was like, check this out. And I don't know, made some stupid joke about them or something. And then he didn't respond, and he was always super responsive. And at all hours of the day, he was just always responsive. And so I was like, well, that's weird. And then but he also had not bothered me about the deadline that I was supposed to, because I was supposed to have that story done at the end of the month. And it was in September. And he hadn't followed up with me to see what progress was. So I was like, he's not bothering me, because he was going to help me write the questions. And I really wanted help with the questions, because I don't know how to, it was just, I don't know what I'm doing when I'm interviewing people. Did I have Facebook at that time? I don't know. Etc., etc. I saw that he had just passed away the week before. So I was like, whoa, because I had also just reached out to him to tell him, hey, I got the interview. I'm interviewing Shane in an hour. Thanks for your support, because I was excited to meet Shane. And yeah, that was the same morning that I found out he died. So then I interviewed Shane Claiborne, and I was like, hey, I just found out my editor died. So we don't have to do this interview if you don't want to. But I have some questions, and I'm bummed. And he was like, well, he's like, I ain't got anything else to do. I blocked out this time, so let's go through your questions. And I was like, okay. I still have that interview somewhere. I still want to find a space for it, but anyhow, that was interesting. And like how nobody ever teaches you how to deal with that conflict of emotions. Like here I am really excited. I got to talk to Shane Claiborne and interview him, and I'm gonna be able to write something on him, and then complete devastation and shock about losing a person who encouraged me and told me I was a great writer and wanted to for him, is because I had asked him for help on fact checking something, because I had been seeing somebody who had a slew of inconsistencies in his stories, and I was like, am I losing my mind or what? And I mean, I just felt like I was literally just losing my mind. And so I detailed out the whole story for Jonathan in an email, and he was like, that's hilarious, this is great. And he got in touch with that band's manager and publicist, and they were like, we don't know who this guy is. Now, I'm not going to say that they never heard of him, because they said there's a lot of people with this name. It's possible that, because this musician, he does, like play with a lot of people, it's possible that he may have at one time participated in playing music with him, but he's not anybody who's had this big of an impact as he's claiming to have had. And so I was just like, oh my God. And I just felt so close to Jonathan, because I was like, dude, you have given me the validation of my sanity. And then I kind of brought it up to the guy, and the guy who had told me this whole story about how he was in all this stuff. And I was like, hey, and I sent him the screenshot of the email from the publicist and the manager who was CC'd. And he ghosted me for an entire year, and I hadn't confronted him about it in an effort to shame him. I honestly was concerned, because there's something wrong with somebody who has to fabricate an entire life like that. And so I had asked, so then I was just really worried, because I was like, dude, did he die? Like, what? I knew he had problems with drinking and drugs. Like, is that part of it? Then we got reconnected, and that was a whole other nightmare, which has something to do with that. But anyhow, so I lost Jonathan, and then I think, is that it? No, I know that there's more. Nope, I think that's all I want to talk about right now, for all the grief and the death. And so all of that to say that the past couple of years have been very heavy. I have been completely dissociated from my presence on this earth. I'm feeling 100% better now than I did last year. But last year, I just don't remember it. It was just like a fog. I know that I operated normally. Like, I was like out in public, and I was doing the things, and I would sometimes show up to stuff, although I became a way worse flake last year than I ever have in my entire life. And I think the word that just came to mind is just, there was a betrayal of self and all of that, because I just kept functioning as normal. I didn't allow myself proper time to grieve. Oh, that was the other thing. So my dog died. Both of my dogs died last year, and they've been on these videos before. You've definitely seen them. Coppola, who I had for 12 years, he died very suddenly. And then Gladwell died a few months after that, and I'd had him for 3 years, and I rescued him, and he had this horrible cancer that spread to his skin. I know this is a really fun video, so thanks for tuning in. This is really uplifting, I know. But he had this horrible cancer that, like, in literally after, even months after he died, and I like deep cleaned my house, I would just find chunks of his fur places because he was just like molting, like his, anyway. Last year, so they were really and oh, the reason that I brought that up is because they were always my comforts. Anytime I was stressed out, sad, happy, you know, in grief, blah blah blah, like my dogs were my comforts. And so then they were gone, and I was like, this is not a great feeling, and I don't know what God is trying to show me in all this, but I'm not into it. I'm not into learning a lesson right now. I just don't want to talk to you right now. Energy that I was giving God, and which is not how I live my life. You know, every day I would do my prayer and meditation. I would go to church. I would connect with other people of Christian faith, just like any type of spirituality and like spiritual growth. I just love growing spiritually. It feels natural. It feels good. And I just stopped all of that. I felt that, you know, God turned his back on me, or that God doesn't exist, or that God hates me. That was never the feeling. It was more this feeling of like, I just don't want to engage with God right now. And so you could say there was some resentment after all the loss. And yeah, so, you know, there hasn't been, I don't even know how to process what that was, because if you watch any of my annoying early videos, I mean, I just couldn't stop talking about God, and God, and just like, not just let's like narrow idea of what a Jesus Christ is, or of what a church is, or what a God is, but like this God that exists on this earth in this power, like that is the God. I don't know that I was willing to continue growing closer to this belief system that had saved me when I saw it fail so many other people. That idea, that sentiment of like not wanting to get closer to God anymore, was essentially what I repeated in all my relationships last year, even with my family, even with friends who I'd had forever, even with, you know, just in how I interact on a day-to-day basis with people. I was always just wanting to learn more about people and get closer to them and be really curious about them and just get to know them as humans on this earth, experiencing life at the same time as me. And I really just became like, no thanks. I don't need to learn about anybody else ever again, because we're all just gonna die. We're all gonna die. It's true, but I'm realizing now that, true, I still want to know people. Like, I still think people are really fascinating, and I love them, like, on a very core level. Yeah, they're annoying, and sometimes they can get, you know, too greedy with time, I guess, or something. I don't know. Maybe they say stupid stuff. Like, so can I, though. And everyone is just a reflection of me, and essentially, and so I get to learn so much about myself through other people. But it has been really difficult to feel comfortable getting close to people again. So I'm kind of learning to, and I'm so grateful to, you know, people who have let me kind of like practice my vulnerability again, because it feels so foreign, you know. In addition to that, just all of my relationships have changed. You know, I had a core group of friends since I got sober in 2017 who I have relied on day and night for my emotional well-being, for my connection to people in the program. And, you know, that group of 6 of us has dwindled down to 3. And I'm kind of still taking, you know, further steps away from that group, because what happens is, like, we all kind of got well together and we were all growing, and then the different things that have happened in all of our lives, we've all responded to so differently. And, you know, I responded by detaching from everybody that I loved, essentially. And, you know, they're still there for me. I still talk to them on a daily basis, but not to the extent that we used to. And, you know, should I talk about this? I'm going to talk about it because this is just a reality of recovery as well, is that you will make these friends in recovery who are your foundation for friendship and true connection. And what can happen is that they, relapse, or even if they don't physically relapse with a drug or alcohol, they can relapse in other parts of their lives. And something that's really big in my recovery community is, food addiction. There's a lot of eating disorders or just disordered eating, body image issues. There's a lot of sex and love addiction. There's a lot of trauma in relationships. There's a lot of porn addiction. There's a lot of abuse. And so, one of my close friends is currently incarcerated for addiction adjacent stuff. And the charges are horrible, horrible. Never in a million years would I have thought this person who saw speak at a meeting and I was like, oh my God, I want what he has. And I'm like, I'm gonna befriend him. And then I do, and then we get close, and he's amazing, this amazing person. He's, I just never would have thought, 5 years ago that he would be in, essentially a local prison with no determined release dates. And it's a maximum security place, and he's gay, and I have a lot of concerns about his safety. I don't know anything about that stuff. I just know I've heard horrific stories about that jail. A somber reminder of where anybody can end up if we don't address the underlying issues that we all have in our lives. It just also reminds me of my inability to control life. I just can't control life. Like, things are just going to happen. People are going to do what they're going to do. And so I just felt in my body being like, yes, this is why we don't get close to people. And it's just like, no, that's not the message I want to give. I'm saying that I know that despite that, like, despite where we are in our friendships right now, I wouldn't give any of that up. Like, this previous 5 years, these people have helped to create my personality and my sense of self in this world. I love them regardless. And I just, pray for him. I think that just about brings us up to speed, and I'm really sorry this is such a long video. I'm hoping I can edit a lot of this out. And I just want to know how you guys are doing, and how has your recovery been, if you're sober or if you're still considering recovery. But maybe now's a good time to start. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just acknowledging that things are a lot different. I'm a very different person in this moment than I will be in 5 minutes, than I will have been 5 minutes ago, than I was especially 5 years ago, and especially 10 years ago. Can you hear my dog? She snores. Can you hear that? So anyway, do you want to say that if you are struggling with alcohol or drugs, or your mental health, or your faith? Yeah, a lot of people are. Yeah, it's all right. You can still survive, and you can still, I think that's the thing. Last year was just a year of surviving day by day. Like, I can almost just see myself clawing my way out of a deep, dark hole, climb towards this light that I can't see, but that I hope is at the end of the tunnel. And some days are like that, and some years are like that, apparently. I feel a lot more light these days, and I'm grateful for it. But I'm definitely just not the person who I was, like I was saying. So I don't know what these videos are going to be like. I hope I can start updating them. Again, definitely not going to promise you that, though. Absolutely zero promises. So if any of this was helpful, I'm sorry, because that means that you've also had a pretty rough couple of years, I guess. Or I don't know how to end this, so I'm just gonna say that I love you, and I hope that you are hanging in there, and I hope that, oh, that's what I was gonna say, that last year was a year of surviving, and here at the end or middle of March, I'm thinking, you know what, I think I'm gonna get out of survival mode. I think I'm thawing out from that, and I'm just gonna walk into an upward climb inclined to thrive, I hope. And so that's kind of what I'm willing to expose myself to. And I know the feeling of discomfort and probably I'm going to experience some shame because I'm going to try new things and I'm going to fail, or I might succeed and I will still have shame because I'll think that I don't deserve it, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy. And I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I am all of those things, and I'm loved, and I'm here, and I'm supposed to be doing these things. So anyhow, I'm so sorry again for the rambling, but I'm back.